You already know. And yet, you do it anyway. Not once. Not by accident. But repeatedly. The same decision. The same pattern. The same quiet return to something you had already understood was not leading anywhere. And so, you go back. Not because you forgot. Not because you were unaware. But because knowing was never the part in control. Because there is a difference between seeing a pattern and being free from it. The difference between recognizing what hurts you and no longer needing what hurts you. And most people confuse the two. They think awareness means distance. They think naming something means they have already stepped outside of it. But often, you can name it clearly while still being moved by it. You can describe the cycle, predict it, warn yourself about it, and still find your hands reaching for the same door your mind already decided should remain closed. That is what makes repetition so difficult to understand from the outside. It does not always look irrational. Sometimes it looks almost deliberate, measured, familiar, even calm. But beneath that calm is something older than the decision itself. Something that had already begun moving before thought had fully arrived. Most people believe behavior follows decision, that once something becomes clear, action will adjust. That awareness leads to change. But that is not how most human behavior operates, because clarity does not override pattern. It only observes it, and observation by itself does not interrupt what has already been reinforced. Over time, the mind likes to believe it is governing the process, that it sits at the center, evaluates the facts, and directs behavior accordingly. But much of what happens in a person does not wait for permission. It emerges. It activates, follows routes that were established long before conscious thought tried to explain them. This is why people can make promises with complete sincerity and still betray them later. Why they can understand the consequence and still move toward it. Why they can want one thing deeply and behave in service of another. Because decision is often treated as the origin of behavior, when in reality, it is frequently just the moment behavior becomes visible to thought, and by then, much of the process is already underway. So the illusion is not merely that you are in control, it is that control begins where awareness begins, and often it does not. What repeats in you is not random, it is structured, built through exposure, through reward, through relief, through familiarity. Every action you return to carries something with it. Not always pleasure, often something more subtle. Relief, reduction of tension, temporary silence, a brief sense of control. And the mind remembers that, not as a thought, but as a pathway, a route, a sequence, a learned movement, between discomfort and whatever seems to soften it. That is how patterns gain strength. Not because they are good, not because they are chosen freely, but because they become associated with regulation, with survival, with return. The nervous system does not ask whether a pattern is meaningful. It asks whether it is known, whether it has worked before, whether it has produced some kind of reduction, however brief, however incomplete. And once that association is made, the pattern stops being occasional. It becomes available, then accessible, then familiar. And what is familiar begins to feel true, even when it is destructive, even when it diminishes you, even when it keeps recreating the very state you say you want to escape, because repetition is not sustained only by desire. It is sustained by recognition, and recognition is one of the strongest forces inside any conditioned system. Sometimes the pattern is not only repeating itself, sometimes it is protecting something, not protecting your future, not protecting your peace, but protecting you from something immediate, something difficult to feel directly, a tension, an emptiness, a restlessness, a memory that does not arrive as a memory, but as sensation, a weight without language, a pressure without image. And instead of meeting that directly, the system reaches what it already knows how to do. Not because it solves anything, but because it delays contact, because it fills the gap, because it gives shape to what would otherwise feel undefined. This is important to understand, because if a pattern is only seen as self-sabotage, you will judge it without understanding its function. And what is judged too quickly is rarely transformed. Some behaviors persist, not because they are desired, but because they are serving as substitutes, as shields, as rituals of avoidance, as small internal mechanisms meant to keep something deeper from rising too fast. So when a pattern returns, the question is not only, what is this causing? Sometimes the deeper question is, what is this helping me not feel? Because until that becomes visible, the behavior will continue to appear more necessary than it actually is. This is where most people misinterpret themselves. They assume contradiction means weakness, that acting against what they know is a failure of discipline. But the system they are operating within was not built by logic alone. It was built by repetition, and repetition does not dissolve. Because of a single realization, you can understand something completely and still be pulled in the opposite direction, because the structure remains intact, and structure has weight. It has momentum, it has sequence, it has timing. The pattern practiced long enough does not ask whether you agree with it now. It simply activates when the conditions resemble what it has learned before. This is why insight can feel powerful and still change very little at first, because insight speaks to meaning, but patterns respond to reinforcement, to interruption, to experience repeated differently enough times that the old route is no longer the easiest one to access. Until then, knowledge can remain strangely powerless, not false, not useless, just insufficient on its own. It can illuminate the mechanism without disabling it. It can help you see the cage without yet teaching the body how to stop walking its perimeter. So when you act against what you know, it does not always mean you are fragmented beyond repair. It often means your understanding has arrived faster than your system has learned how to follow it. And that delay between realization and reorganization is where many people begin to lose trust in themselves, when really, they are not seeing failure, they are seeing the time lag between awareness and structural change. There comes a point where behavior no longer feels like a choice. It feels like a return, a default, a path already cleared, not because you decided again, but because something in you recognized the route before you had time to intervene. And by the time awareness appears, the action is already in motion. This is the part that often feels most unsettling, because it makes people wonder whether they ever had agency at all. How can something feel chosen and automatic at the same time? Because the return is smooth, frictionless. It does not announce itself. It does not always arrive with a strong emotional signal. Sometimes it comes quietly, as habit, as a slight turning inward, as a familiar justification, as one small movement that leads to another, then another, until the pattern has fully resumed, before you have even named it. That is how deeply conditioned behavior works. It minimizes the appearance of decision. It compresses the space between impulse and action, and when that space is small enough, the return feels natural, almost reasonable, as if it simply happened. But it did not just happen. It followed a route that had been prepared, a route maintained by repetition so consistent that the system learned to trust it more. Then reflection. This is where control becomes misunderstood, because what people call self-control often assumes a single, unified self. But there isn't one. There are layers, processes, conditioned responses that operate before language, before evaluation, before intention has time to stabilize. And those layers do not respond to instruction. They respond to pattern, to reinforcement, to what has been repeated enough to feel inevitable. There is the part of you that explains, the part that plans, the part that promises, and beneath that, there are systems that do not speak in plans. They speak in sensation, in urgency, in aversion, in craving, in learned sequences that developed not to be elegant, but to be effective. At some point, many of those systems were not trying to become your identity. They were trying to help you adapt, to reduce overwhelm, to create order, to restore contact with something manageable. But adaptation, when repeated long enough, becomes character in the eyes of the person living it. And then people say, this is just who I am. Well, what they are describing is not essence. It is conditioning. It is survival that outlived the moment that first required it. So the inner system is not one voice. It is a layered terrain where different forces compete for timing, for access, for expression, and the part that knows best is not always the part that moves first. To interrupt a pattern is not simply to decide differently. It is to introduce friction where there was none, to slow down a process that has learned to move without resistance. And that friction does not feel like clarity. It feels like discomfort, delay, uncertainty, a break in continuity, which is why most people return to the familiar pattern before anything new has time to form, because friction rarely feels virtuous. While it is happening, it feels inconvenient, artificial, exposing. It can feel like standing inside a pause, with nothing stable to hold. The old behavior no longer feels fully acceptable. The new behavior does not yet feel natural. And between those two, there is a stretch of internal instability that many people mistake for failure. But that instability is often the first real sign that the automatic sequence has been interrupted. For a pattern to lose power, it usually has to become awkward first, visible, slower, less seamless, and that awkwardness can be deeply uncomfortable for a system trained to seek immediate resolution. This is why discomfort is not always evidence that something is wrong. Sometimes it is evidence that something automatic is no longer moving unchecked, that the path is no longer perfectly clear. That interruption has finally begun to register, and if that friction is tolerated instead of escaped, even briefly, the old loop is forced to confront something it was never designed to endure. Non-completion. There is a moment, brief and often unnoticed, where awareness arrives early enough to see the pattern before it completes. Not after, not as reflection, but in motion. That moment is unstable, because nothing automatic can take over yet, and nothing new is fully formed. Most people exit that moment quickly. They resolve it, they act, they return. But if that moment is sustained, even slightly, something begins to change. Not the thought, the structure. This is the moment that matters more than most realizations, because it is not theoretical. It is live. It is the instant in which the usual chain has not yet locked into place. A window, small but real, where the pattern becomes observable without being completed immediately. In that space, you may feel almost nothing noble, not strength, not certainty, sometimes only agitation. A strange openness, a sense that something familiar is asking to happen, and you are not letting it finish. That can feel disorienting, even threatening, because repetition offers closure, and interruption removes it. But this is the threshold, the place where automatic return meets conscious delay. And if you remain there a few seconds longer than usual, if you resist the urge to end the tension in the old way, the system is forced to register a new possibility, not as an idea, as an event. And events, repeated, become memory. Memory becomes expectation. Expectation begins to alter response. This is how change starts to become real, quietly, not through dramatic reinvention, but through a moment that would normally collapse. So even a brief hesitation can begin to weaken what once felt fixed. You may still return, still repeat, still find yourself inside the same cycle again. But if you saw more of it this time, that matters. If you noticed the trigger sooner, that matters. If the behavior felt less seamless, less invisible, less automatic, that matters. Because structure does not always collapse all at once. Sometimes it loosens gradually, through partial awareness, through incomplete returns, through moments where the old route still happens, but no longer happens with the same total authority. That is often how real change looks, before it becomes obvious. Not clean, not linear, not dramatic enough to impress the part of you that wants immediate proof, but real, because the system is learning. That inevitability was never as absolute as it seemed. You are not repeating because you don't know. You are repeating because something in you was built to return, quietly, consistently, over time. And once you see that, the question is no longer, why do I keep doing this? But at what point does it begin? Where does the pattern start? What triggers it? What reinforces it? What it avoids? Because change does not begin at the moment of action. It begins before the action feels inevitable. It begins in the unnoticed sequence, in the subtle activation, in the shift of state that happens before the story forms, before the justification, before the hand moves, before the familiar route feels like the only route available. That is where observation becomes useful, not as judgment, not as analysis for its own sake, but as contact with the earliest movement of the pattern. Because once the pattern feels complete, control is already reduced. But before completion, before the return locks in, there is still a margin, still a threshold, still a point where inevitability has not yet fully taken shape. And that moment is where control actually exists, not as force, not as suppression, but as proximity, as timing, as the ability to remain present a little earlier than you did before, long enough to see what begins, long enough to feel what usually gets escaped, long enough to interrupt what once seemed unquestionable. And if that moment is recognized often enough, sustained carefully enough, repeated consistently enough, then what once felt inevitable begins slowly to lose its certainty, not all at once, but enough for a different pattern to become possible, enough for return to stop feeling